Stand on Greenland's southwestern coast in the year 1000 AD and witness one of history's most audacious survival experiments. Norse settlers, Vikings from Iceland and Norway, have established permanent farms on the edge of the Arctic, building turf-walled longhouses on land covered by ice for most of the year. They're raising cattle and sheep where polar bears hunt, growing barley where the growing season lasts barely 3 months, and trying to recreate Scandinavian farm life in one of Earth's harshest environments. This isn't a temporary camp or trading post. These are families, children born in Greenland who've never seen trees, entire communities committed to surviving where survival seems impossible. For 5 centuries, the Norse Greenlanders will endure, developing unique adaptations to Arctic life, trading walrus ivory to Europe, even launching the first European expedition to North America. Then, mysteriously, they'll disappear, their farms abandoned, their fate unknown for centuries. Today, advanced AI technology allows us to transform archaeological excavations, Norse sagas, and climate data into photorealistic recreations, bringing this lost Arctic world back to life. Join me as we explore how Vikings survived Greenland in 1000 AD, discovering the ingenious adaptations that made life possible, understanding why they came to this frozen edge of the world, and learning why their remarkable experiment ultimately failed. Erik the Red, founding a Greenland colony. The story begins with murder and exile. Erik the Red, a volatile Norwegian farmer living in Iceland, kills several men in feuds and is outlawed from Iceland for 3 years in 982 AD. Rather than skulk in hiding, Erik sails west into unknown waters, reaching a massive island that earlier Norse sailors had glimpsed. He spends 3 years exploring the southwestern coast, finding fjords with grassy valleys that remind him of Norway. When Erik returns to Iceland in 985, he brings tales of a fertile land he calls Greenland, a deliberate marketing choice. The name isn't entirely deceptive. The coastal areas do turn green in summer. But it's also brilliant propaganda designed to attract settlers to a land that's mostly ice and rock. 25 ships depart Iceland in 986, carrying perhaps 500 colonists, farmers, craftsmen, their families, livestock, tools, and everything needed to establish permanent settlement. Only 14 ships arrive. The others are lost to storms or turn back. But those who make it establish 2 main settlements: the eastern settlement near modern Qaqortoq, and the western settlement farther north near modern Nuuk. Watch the settlers arrive in summer, sailing into deep fjords surrounded by mountains. The landscape is breathtaking and terrifying. Massive ice fields visible in the distance, glaciers calving into the sea, but also grassy valleys where sheep can graze and sheltered coves where boats can anchor. This is the edge of the possible, the absolute limit of where Scandinavian farming can survive. Building a life. The Norse Greenland farm. Walk through a typical Norse Greenland farm in the year 1000 and see how these people adapted European farming to Arctic conditions. The main longhouse is built partially underground, its walls made of stacked turf bricks 3 feet thick for insulation. The roof is turf-covered as well. The entire structure is essentially a grass-covered mound with a doorway. Inside, the longhouse is dim, smoky, and surprisingly warm. A long fire pit runs down the center, burning precious driftwood or, more commonly, dried heather, willow scrub, and even bones when wood is scarce. Benches line the walls, serving as both seating and sleeping platforms. Woven tapestries or skins hang on the walls for decoration and additional insulation. The farm family numbers perhaps 10 to 15 people, parents, children, elderly grandparents, perhaps a servant or 2. Everyone sleeps in the main hall, bodies pressed close for warmth. Privacy doesn't exist. The air is thick with smoke from the fire, the smell of unwashed bodies, drying fish, and livestock. Yes, livestock live here too. Look toward one end of the longhouse and see cattle, sheep, and goats housed in an attached byre, separated from the living area by a partial wall but sharing the building's warmth. The animals' body heat helps warm the structure, and keeping them inside protects them from Greenland's brutal winters. The smell is overwhelming: manure, wet wool, animal breath, but that's preferable to losing your livestock to cold or polar bears. Farming at the edge of possibility. Step outside in summer and watch the frantic race against time. The growing season lasts perhaps 12 weeks, from June to August. Every day counts. The farmer and his family work from dawn until the midnight sun's dim light finally fades, harvesting grass for hay, tending small barley fields, and gathering berries. The hay is critical. See those vast fields of grass being cut with iron scythes? Every blade is precious. The hay must sustain cattle, sheep, and goats through winters lasting 8 to 9 months. Norse Greenlanders developed sophisticated hay storage systems, building stone barns with raised floors to keep hay dry. A large farm might harvest 20 tons of hay annually, barely enough to keep livestock alive until spring. The crops are minimal. Barley grows in sheltered locations during good summers, but yields are unpredictable. One late frost, one cold summer, and the entire crop fails. The Norse Greenlanders can't rely on grain like their European cousins. They must look elsewhere for food. The Church, spiritual life at the world's edge. Christianity transforms Norse Greenland. Leif Erikson brings Christianity from Norway around 1000 AD. His mother, Theodhild, builds Greenland's first church at Brattahlid, Erik the Red's farm. Erik, stubborn pagan, refuses to convert, creating marital tension that becomes saga material. By 1100, Greenland has its own bishop, appointed by the Archbishop of Norway. The episcopal seat at Gardar becomes Norse Greenland's most impressive complex: a cathedral, bishop's residence, and several outbuildings, all built of stone and imported timber. Walk through Gardar's cathedral in 1200 AD and witness Arctic Catholicism. The building is modest by European standards, perhaps 60 feet long, but remarkable for Greenland. Stone walls support a timber roof, every beam imported from Norway. Stained glass windows, also imported, cast colored light across the interior. The altar holds silver vessels and embroidered vestments, signs of connection to wider Christendom. The church demands tithes, 10% of production, payable in ivory, hides, and livestock. This creates tension, but also integration. Norse Greenlanders are Christians, part of Catholic Europe, their children baptized, their dead buried in consecrated ground. When the bishop dies, his body is shipped back to Norway for burial, maintaining connection even in death. Social structure, life in the settlements. Norse Greenland society mirrors European feudalism. At the top are wealthy farmers like the descendants of Erik the Red, controlling the best land, owning the most livestock, and organizing the northern hunting expeditions. A dozen or so families dominate each settlement, forming an aristocracy of sorts. Below them are independent farmers, men who own land and livestock but lack the resources of the elite. They owe no formal service but depend on wealthy neighbors for access to boats, hunting territories, and trade connections. At the bottom are servants and laborers, working for wages or room and board, owning nothing. Some are Norse born into poverty, others are possibly Inuit or mixed Norse-Inuit, though the evidence is unclear. The Thing, the Norse assembly, meets each summer to settle disputes, announce laws, and make communal decisions. It's democracy of a sort, though weighted toward the wealthy. The system maintains order in a society where cooperation is essential to survival. Contact with the Inuit, two cultures in the Arctic. Around 1200 AD, a new people arrive in Greenland, the Thule Inuit, expanding eastward from Alaska and Canada. They're perfectly adapted to Arctic hunting, using kayaks, harpoons, and sophisticated techniques to hunt seals, whales, and walrus. The Norse call them skraelings, a derogatory term meaning something like wretches or barbarians. The relationship is complex and often hostile. The sagas record occasional violence, raids, murders, theft. Archaeological evidence suggests minimal peaceful trade, though some Norse graves contain Inuit artifacts. This is puzzling because the Inuit possess skills the Norse desperately need. The Inuit hunt seals year-round using breathing hole techniques. They make sophisticated cold-weather clothing from caribou and seal skins. Their kayaks are perfectly designed for Arctic waters. Yet the Norse seem to have learned little from them, clinging to European farming traditions even as conditions worsen. The beginning of the end. Climate change. Stand in Greenland in 1300 and feel the world growing colder. The medieval warm period that made settlement possible is ending, replaced by the Little Ice Age. Summers grow shorter and colder. Pack ice extends farther south, making navigation difficult and eventually impossible for months each year. The grass grows less vigorously. Hay production declines. Watch a farming family struggle with the new reality. The cattle they've carefully maintained through winter emerge gaunt and weak in spring. 2 cows die before grass grows enough for grazing. The barley field produces nothing. Frost killed the seedlings. The family survives on seal meat and hopes the hunting is good. The trade ships arrive less frequently. Some years, none come at all. The settlements become more isolated. European demand for walrus ivory declines as African elephant ivory becomes available through Mediterranean trade. Greenland's primary export loses value. The Western settlement is abandoned first, sometime around 1350. When hunters from the Eastern settlement visit in the 1360s, they find farms abandoned, livestock running wild, nobody left. Where did they go? Did they die, move south, join the Inuit? No one knows. Mystery and disappearance. The Eastern settlement survives longer, but also vanishes. The last written record dates to 1408, a wedding recorded in church records. Then, silence. When European ships finally return in the early 1500s, they find only ruins. The Norse Greenlanders are gone. What happened? Theories abound. Climate change made farming impossible. Isolation cut them off from necessary supplies. Disease ravaged the population. Violence with Inuit destroyed them. They abandoned Greenland voluntarily, sailing to Iceland or America. Archaeological evidence suggests gradual decline, fewer trade goods in later graves, signs of malnutrition, smaller livestock indicating deteriorating conditions. Conclusion. Lessons from a lost colony. Stand in Greenland today amid ruins of Norse farms, stone walls outlining longhouses, church foundations, graves containing the remains of people who lived and died at the world's edge. The farms they built still show on the landscape, depressions marking halls where families gathered around fires, telling stories of Norway they'd never seen. Norse Greenland teaches us about human adaptability and its limits. These settlers survived for centuries in conditions barely able to support European-style farming, showing remarkable ingenuity and endurance. They organized complex, long-distance hunting expeditions, maintained trade across the Atlantic, built churches and farms, raised children, and created a functioning society in the Arctic. But they also show how cultural conservatism can become fatal. When conditions changed, the Norse Greenlanders couldn't abandon their identity as European Christian farmers. They couldn't or wouldn't adopt Inuit techniques that might have saved them. Their commitment to their culture was both their strength and their doom. Understanding Norse Greenland means understanding the profound human need to recreate home in new places, even when adaptation might require abandoning what makes us who we are. It's a reminder that survival sometimes demands losing ourselves to save ourselves, a choice the Norse Greenlanders couldn't make. This was Norse Greenland, where Vikings built farms on ice, survived for centuries against impossible odds, and ultimately disappeared into mystery. If you enjoyed this journey to the Arctic past, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss where we're going next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the past.